So this is the Tyrol Panorama. Here we have the Imperial Hunting Museum and the Andreas Hofer Gallery, and that is what I'm going to actually talk about now, is Andreas Hofer. Now in there's a painting which is enormous, which you can see, which tells you something about what is called the myth of the Tyrol. It's the legend behind it, and part of that legend is indeed this character Andreas Hofer, who resisted the French invasion. Now, we could start going into who started the war in the first place and things like that, and I probably will do that some other time, but with me being somewhat anti-militaristic now, despite having been in the army myself. And there's Andreas. He's got this really big statue to celebrate what he did. And so now let's have a bit of a look at what he did do. I apologise for the sun, not much I can do about that. I'm glad there is sun, but it's probably coming out pretty dark. Andreas Hofer was born in November 1767. So as we're coming up now to the 250th anniversary of his birth, no doubt they'll be doing something to celebrate. Not that I noticed it anywhere, but I shall be writing to the tourist board about that, just to remind them. His father owned an inn, and he inherited it. And he also did a bit of trade in horses, which he picked up in Italy, or he sold there. So he sort of he got around a bit, and he spoke Italian quite fluently. He was elected to the Tyrolean Landtag in 1791, and which was it wasn't democracy as such, but it was under Habsburg control. But in the war of the Third Coalition against the French, he was a sharpshooter, and he got promoted, became an officer in the Austrian Imperial Army. And after Austria was defeated, Tyrol was transferred to Bavaria, which is now in France, according to the 1805 Treaty of Pressburg. And what happened was that the Bavarians were quite stern on the local population, and Hofer became a leader of the anti-Bavarian movement. So by January 1809, he was part of a delegation that went to Vienna to ask Emperor Francis I of Austria to give some assistance. Now, at the same time, he started to organise people who wanted to rebel, and was discussing this and planning and this type of thing. And so to do this, he had to travel around the countryside a great deal, trying to find people who thought the same, who would actually join in an insurrection. And the Tyrolean Rebellion itself began on the 9th of April 1809, started here in Innsbruck. And what happened was, to get people to rebel, well, people knew about it, but they didn't know when it would actually happen. So they dumped some sacks of sawdust in the River Inn, and that was the sign to start the rebellion. So people saw them floating through the town, and then they knew it was time to take up arms. The church bells rang, and muskets were fired, and this type of thing, and people knew there was a rebellion in hand. And the small Bavarian garrison was surprised, as were indeed some French who just happened to be passing through. On the 11th of April, Tyrolean militia defeated the Bavarian force at Steyersen, and so Innsbruck was captured before noon on that day. Now the French came from the south across the Brenner Pass as a relief, and they counterattacked the next night. And around here, the first battle of Bergisel was fought, which was a victory for Hofer. And Austrian forces then actually moved into Innsbruck itself, and they actually set up a provisional government for the area, and Hofer advanced south, and he took Bolzano and Trento, or should I say Bolton and Trent, these are the German words. However, the rebellion didn't work, because there was Napoleon got involved, and in a series of battles he actually beat Charles of Austria. And so the Austrians had to pull out of Tyrol as part of the peace treaty that was actually signed. And the French Marshal François-Joseph Lefebvre took control around here. On the 13th of May, defeated the Austrians at Vergel, and the Bavarians were back in Innsbruck on the 19th of May. Nonetheless, as soon as the French pulled out, Hofer started moving back in again, and you got support from other places, and you got as much support as 20,000 men. That means quite a lot, really. Also, there's a couple of hundred Austrians who were still hanging around following the surrender. Now, at the Second Battle of Bergisel, again here, 25th to the 29th of May, Hofer's troops defeated the Bavarians. They forced out the country, and he took Innsbruck again on the 30th of May. I mean, Innsbruck just to the left of me right now. And not only that, but during the Battle of Bergisel on the 29th of May, the Emperor Francis wrote to Hofer, and he promised not to sign any peace agreement that would mean that Tyrol was given up, and indeed sent somebody as a interim ruler. Nonetheless, Napoleon turned up, and in the Battle of Wagram on the 6th of July, there's a railway station in Paris, or underground station called Wagram. It's a major French victory, and the Austrians couldn't cope with this, and they had to sign a peace treaty called Znaim. Tyrol was once again ceded to Bavaria, and this time Napoleon sent 40,000 French and Bavarians to take over the Tyrol to make sure there was no more problems. Now Hofer, he didn't quite know what to do, but he thought, well, okay, after the French offered a reward, he took up arms once more. So on the 13th to 14th of August, it was the third Battle of the Bergisel, which is the one which is celebrated in the museum down there. Now the Tyroleans retook Innsbruck for the third time. Hofer declared himself the Imperial commandant of Tyrol, and he set up to rule in the Imperial Palace. You can see a little film in the Hofburg as well, which will be available on my YouTube site. And so, I mean, he certainly acted as a ruler. He changed the law on certain things. He raised taxes, he printed his own coins, and he sent 2 people off the UK to see if he can get assistance from the British. And anyway, 29th of September, the Emperor once more promises he will not surrender Tyrol. So what happens on the 14th of October? Treaty of Schönbrunn, that's in Vienna, and it cedes Tyrol to Bavaria once more. Nonetheless, the Tyroleans who had been part of these uprisings, they were promised an amnesty, and they laid down arms, and that was on the 8th of November. 4 days later, on the 12th of November, Hofer got word that the Austrians had once more advanced and they had beaten the French, and he tried to get his troops back together again. I mean, it's 1 week after they'd all gone home. He tries to recall them back to battle again, but not many turned up, and it's not a surprise really. Winter's just about to start, and they certainly don't want to go off to war if they can avoid it. So this time the French defeated him, and he had to hide. The French put out a reward of for his capture, 1,500 guilders, and his neighbour, one Franz Raffel, betrayed him, and he said where he was. Hofer was captured by the Italians 28th of January 1810, and he was sent to Mantua in Italy. Now, what happened next is not quite clear, because it would seem that maybe Napoleon gave the orders that he would have a fair trial and then get shot, although later, I think in 1813, when Napoleon was talking to Metternich, he said that he didn't want Hofer to be shot. Now, the story goes that Hofer was put in front of the firing squad, he refused the blindfold, and indeed gave the order to fire. So today he's remembered. His body was brought back here in 1816 after the defeat of Napoleon. And there you have it. It says, "For God, Kaiser, the Emperor, and the Fatherland." 1767, so it's 22nd November 1767 to 1810. So he's 42 years old when he was shot. Now, in this area we do have one or two other things relating to Austrian military history, which I'm now going to have a quick look at. Around here we have a memorial to somebody carrying a flag, and it appears to be carrying the flag over dead people, 1816 to 1918. Seems to be carrying the flag despite his comrades who are lying there, wounded, dying. To me, I see that very negative. He should have dropped the flag and taken care of the injured first. And that's the way I see it. Here we have a song about heroes. Now, here we have a monument to Kaiser Karl I. He succeeded from Franz Josef when he died in 1916. So Franz Ferdinand, if he hadn't have been shot in Sarajevo, would have been the emperor. But as Franz Ferdinand's marriage was morganic, that's to say his children could not succeed to be rulers. So in fact, Kaiser Karl would have become Kaiser anyway had he outlived Franz Ferdinand, or his children would have been. Now, talking of his children, is a very interesting thing is that his son, had the Habsburg continued, his son would have been the longest living monarch in history. I think. I stand to be corrected, but I think that is the case, because if I remember rightly, he died in 2006. So that would have been well over 80 years, 86 years he would have reigned as such. He's only a child, of course, when he died. And as you can see from here, I mean, Karl was 35 moment of death. Now, Karl did try to get peace, but by the time he became Kaiser, the war was effectively lost for Austria. And although Austria, obviously with German help, managed, and the Bolsheviks' help, and the Russian people's help, I should say, did manage to knock the Tsar out of the war, Austria then went on to the incredible victory of Caporetto, but only to be defeated by the Italians at the battles on the Piave, and more importantly at Vittorio Veneto in 1918. And the Habsburg Empire, the Habsburgs, which had lasted for such a long time, since the 14th century, came to naught. Now here we have these four rather odd statues, and there is a bit of a story here behind them, which I've got to say I don't understand to the very end, and I'd like to see if anybody else has any suggestions as to what they can be. But let's have a look at the description that we've got here. So it says here, the four reliefs shown at this place, the remains of a Kaiserjäger monument originally planned to be established in Bozen at Bolzano for the regiment of the Kaiserjäger by Karl Ernstberger in 1916. Now, sculptor Franz Ehrenhofer was asked to carry out the works of the monument and had already been finished in part by 1917. In the years 1927, 1928, however, the monument was partially levelled down. Its foundation walls were used up for the Victory Monument at that time that was set up in Bozen. The reliefs could be recovered in 1914 to be set up at the Bergisel. Now, so there was going to be a monument to the Italian victory in World War I. They started work on it. Bolzano was captured in November 1918. So the Victory Monument, if there was one, was to be Italian. But these reliefs were sent back in 1940 when Hitler had now occupied Austria. So, did Mussolini send them back? Seems a bit unusual to me. Maybe that's what happened. Well, logically, it must have happened that way. But here, obviously, there's the Rome-Berlin axis. It does seem somewhat strange. Anyway, let's have a look now at what they actually mean. The first one is the soldier's prayer, the second soldier's grief, devotion, and the soldier's song. Here we have other monuments to Austrian militarism. Now, I would like to state as well about the First World War. Let's say it was Austria. It started the war. Austria itself, though, was torn by national tendencies within it, and to a large extent, I don't think there was a great deal of love lost between the Austrians and the Hungarians, even though it was a dual monarchy. Franz Ferdinand, who was shot at Sarajevo, he was the head of a Hungarian regiment, and he couldn't speak a word of Hungarian and he couldn't stand the Hungarians, although he can't be much of a racist because he married a Czech woman, and he himself argued for more independence for the Slavic countries, or Slavic nations within the Austro-Hungarian Empire, and as such, he believed that would strengthen the empire. Indeed, I read that in newspapers from July 1914. So, that was widely known. That could have been one of the reasons why the Serbian terrorists decided to kill him, so that he wouldn't be able to make the Habsburg Empire, Austro-Hungary, to be more acceptable to the Slavic population. So that's a bit of a rant of mine on this subject. It's one of the things I do happen to know a little bit about, being interested in military history, and a person who is absolutely opposed to all forms of nationalism. Nationalism never leads to anything good. I'd read that out to you if I could actually make out a bit better what it said, but I can't quite make it out. So I can't, so okay, so this is Innsbruck. I've done lots of filming in Innsbruck. I've talked about Innsbruck, so please see my other things from here if you find that interesting. Also, please subscribe. I've also got a history site on Facebook, which is called History Site, on Alan Heath's history page. The history site is the link. You can just travel if you want to subscribe to my YouTube channel, and I've got Facebook channels as well on travel.